Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We welcome you here, whether you're in the sanctuary with us or whether you're joining us via the live stream. It's been, I don't know what your week has been like. It's been a little hectic for me. I know it's been very hectic for my wife, and we're both looking forward to the peace of Shabbat descending upon us as we welcome it here tonight. And I'm delighted to be here on the bima with Albert Amar, who will be bringing some beautiful music to enhance our worship tonight. And we will begin on page 19 in our Siddur with Lechune Ranana.
Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Ladonai. Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Ladonai. Nariya, Nariya, Litzur Yishenu, Nekadma Fana Betoda. Nariya, Nariya, Litzur Yishenu, Izmira Nariya. Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Ladonai. Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Ladonai.
And we welcome Shabbat with the kindling of Shabbat candles, and it's my pleasure to invite Emma Weisenbluth to come. And Emma will lead us in a reading on page 20 or 21, and then lead us in the Shabbat blessing.
Please join me at the bottom of page 20. On this day we would see the world in a new light. On this day we would add new spirit to our lives.
On this day we take certain time and peace. We would rest as our gain ambition for things.
We would raise our eyes to look beyond time and space toward eternity. Oh, may we come to see the world in a new light.
As it is written, let a new light shine upon Zion, and may it be our blessing to see its splendor.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher shanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you, Emma. And we'll turn in our Siddurim to page 24, and we'll sing together Yedid Nefesh.
Yedid Nefesh Rachama, Yedid Nefesh Rachama, Lishocharecha, Eretz Onecha, Lishocharecha,
And we turn to page 29, where we will welcome the Sabbath bride, singing Lecha Dodi, our usual verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. For verse 9 we'll rise and face the entrance of the sanctuary. Lecha Dodi Lecha B'nei Shabbat Me'avela Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Me'avela Lecha Dodi Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Me'avela Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Me'avela Sha'amor v'zachor v'libur echad Yishnen lev ha'miluchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad Le'shem tifarech l'tfilah Lecha Dodi Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Likrat Shabbat le'elchu v'le'elcha Ki hi makor ha'bracha Me'rosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh b'makavat tila Lecha Dodi Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Hitoreri, hitoreri Hila orech kumi ori 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 shidaberi Kevod Adonai alayich nila Lecha Dodi Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Koli b'shalom aderet bala Gam b'simcha u'tzola Toch emunei asegula Bo mikala bo mikala Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat me'avela Koli b'shalom aderet bala Gam b'simcha u'tzola Toch emunei asegula Bo mikala bo mikala Please be seated. And we'll turn to page 34 for the reading, How Can I Sing? And Rita, can I ask you to lead us there?
How can I sing of day and night when it is God who formed them?
How can I sing of heavens and earth when it is God who decreed them?
How can I sing of mountains and hills when it is God who planted them?
How can I sing of fields and earth when it is God who begot them?
And how can I sing of earth and its fullness when it is God who bade them be?
I shall sing to God who fashioned all and is beyond all. It is to God I shall sing. We turn to page 36 and we rise for the call to prayer, the Baruch. Lena, will you please lead us in the middle of page 37 under reading Bet?
God of all the worlds, how insignificant we are in your sight, and how minute in your presence. You are creator of a universe so vast that the effort to conceive it overwhelms the mind. Our mightiest telescopes scan but a corner of it. The rays of light that reach us from distant galaxies began their journey long before we came to be. Counted from first creation, the earth we live on was born but yesterday, and we made our appearance on it only a moment ago.
When we consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what is humanity that you are mindful of us? What are we mortals that you consider us? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv ha'ravim. And on page 38, we sing Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam, Et Yisrael, Amcha, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Alkein Adonai Eloheinu v'shofeinu, Umeinu nahashiach b'chukecha, v'zivcha b'divrei toratecha, u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem hayenu, ve'yorech yameinu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We turn to page 40 and we rise for the central statement of our beliefs, the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzvavecha hayom ha'levavecha, ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibatam b'shiftecha b'beitecha ובבית לכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Please be seated. Ruth Ostrar, will you please lead us on page 42 under Aleph?
All this we hold to be true and certain. The Eternal alone is our God, there is none else, and we are Israel, God's people.
Our divine protector delivers us from the hand of human oppressors and saves us from the fist of tyrants.
You perform wonders without number, marvels that surpass our understanding.
You urge us toward life and revive us when we stumble.
You did wonders for us in Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh.
You led your people Israel out forever to serve you in freedom.
When your children beheld your power, they praised you and gave you thanks. Freely they accepted your sovereignty, and Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you with great joy.
And we sing that same song that our ancestors sang at the shore of Freedom Sea, Micha Mocha, on page 44. Micha Mocha b'ha'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha nedavar kodesh, Torah hi lo tosef elech, Torah hi lo tosef elech, Malchutecha As you redeemed Israel and saved us from arms stronger than our own, so may you redeem all those who are still oppressed and persecuted. We praise you, Eternal One, the Redeemer of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. And we turn to page 46 in our Sidurim, and we will sing V'shamru. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ששת ימים עשה אדוני השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת שבת וינפש שבת, שבת וינפש שבת v'yinafash. And we'll join together responsively on page 49 with the Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechonu יומכון ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן ביעלמה ויאמרו amen. And rise for the Amidah on page 50. Adonai Sefata Tiftach Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Sarah Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Rivka Elohei Yaakov Elohei Rachel Ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ha'anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'Konei Hakol Ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot Imaot U'Mei Gula B'nei Nehem Le'an Shemo B'Yahava Melech Hosea Moshiach Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Avraham Ve'Ezra Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei HaKol Atah Rav Le'Hoshia Mechakel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayei HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim Solel Noflim V'Rafeh Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Chayei U'Munato L'Shenei Afar Mi Chamocha Ba'al Gevurot U'Midoho Melach Melech Mimit U'Chayei U'Matzmiach Yeshua V'Ne'manata L'Chayot HaKol Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaKol. Please be seated. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. O God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like the softness of moonlight, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Sandy, will you lead us near the top of the page in English on page 54?
You are one, your name is one, and there is none like your people, Israel. A people unique on the earth, a garment of glory have you given us, a crown of salvation, a day of rest and holiness.
Abraham rejoiced in it, Isaac sang, Jacob and his children were refreshed by its rest. In this rest are love and sharing, truth and faithfulness and peace, quiet and safety. It is the perfect rest that you have willed.
May your children come to understand that this Shabbat rest links them to you, that by it they may hallow your name.
And we give thanks for the privilege of worship on page 57.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael u'befilatatam be'ahavat yikabel. Baruch atah Adonai המחזיר שכינתו בציון שפוך עלינו וצלננו ושלחה לציון ברחמים. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו בציון המחזיר שכינתו בציון.
And we'll turn to page 60. And at the top of the page, Zach, will you lead us there, please, in the English?
Sure. We gratefully acknowledge eternal you are our creator and preserver of our life and our protecting shield. We give thanks to you for our lives which are in your hands, for our souls which are in your keeping, for your wondrous providence and your continuous goodness which you bestow upon us day by day. Truly, your mercies never fail and your love and kindness never cease. Therefore, do we put our trust in you.
O God, our
Redeemer and Helper, all who live
eternal God,
His name is goodness. We give you thanks and praise. And we'll read responsively under Bet on page 62. Radiant is the world's soul, full of splendor and beauty, full of life.
Of souls hidden, of treasures of the Holy Spirit,
Of fountains of strength,
of greatness and beauty.
proudly I ascend toward the heights of the world soul that gives life to the universe.
Majestic division,
Come, joy, come, find peace, embrace delight, taste and see that God is good. Why spend your substance on what does not nourish, and your labor on what cannot satisfy? Listen to me, and you will enjoy what is good, and find delight in what is truly precious. We pray for peace on the top of the next page. Shalom, Rav Yisrael, Amecha, Ve'ako Habim Ta'asim, Le'olam. Shalom, Rav Yisrael, Amecha, Ve'ako Habim Ta'asim, Le'olam. Ki ata hu melech Adon, lecho ha'shalom, v'tov b'einecha, levarech et amcha Yisrael, v'tov et uchosha b'shlomecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Osei HaShalom. We pray the prayer of our own hearts. Osei Shalom bimromah, Uyaseh Shalom aleinu, Le'al Yisrael, Le'al kol aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. It may surprise you, or I suppose it may surprise you not in the least, that something I really enjoy is going to Renaissance festivals, or Renfests, as we nerds like to call them. Renfests have so much to offer. You get to eat steak on a stake, which is great, because as everyone knows, all foods taste better when eaten off of a stick. You can delight in the antics of performers like the comedy geek magician Zoltan the Adequate, who, by the way, is a nice Jewish boy from North York. And you get to enjoy the outdoors on a lovely summer day and do some pretty impressive people watching. I was reminded recently of one time when Sandy and I took our two boys, Noah and Isaac, to the Renfest which they used to hold in Milton. This was a long time ago now, maybe 20 years ago. Our boys were quite young. I think Isaac was still about 5 years old. We were having a great time. The boys were enthralled by the people in their Renfest costumes, people jousting on horseback and demonstrating fencing with real metal swords. Things were going great. The boys were having the time of their lives. And then we decided to take in a performance of The Mud Show, which was a group of 4 performers who used a mud pit for their stage. They were doing their dramatic interpretation of Dante's Inferno, which consisted mainly of them taking turns diving into and wrestling with each other in the mud. Anyone could plainly see by the condition of the benches near the front that getting too close to the stage in this show could result in the need for some extra laundry when you got home. There was a pretty obvious splash zone. Nevertheless, my boys were keen to take in the action from the very first row. I think Sandy and I wisely chose the 3rd row or so, maybe the 4th. Isaac was wearing what we were to find out was his favorite t-shirt. I still remember that it had green and white stripes. By the end of the mud show, the inevitable happened, and Isaac got splashed with what turned out to be a surprisingly small amount of mud, a spot about the size of a dime, right in the middle of his chest. When he noticed this, he got really upset, like the kind of abject misery that only 5-year-olds can experience. No matter how much we explained to him that we could just wash his shirt when we got home, there was nothing that we could say that would stop the tears. He was sure his favorite shirt was ruined forever. But in reality, all that was ruined was a fun day out with the family at the Renfest. For reasons that I'll come back to, I was actually reminded of this trip to the Renfest when we read this week's Torah portion, Va'era. This parsha is more or less Exodus chapters 6 through 9, and it recounts primarily the first 7 plagues which God wrought upon the Pharaoh and the Egyptians in order to convince them to release the Israelites from slavery. Now, we've all read this Torah portion, or at the very least, we've seen the movie with Charlton Heston, and we've certainly recited the list of the plagues around our Passover Seder tables. Blood, frogs, lice, swarms, pestilence, boils, hail. The last 3 plagues are in Parashat Bo, so you'll have to come back next week to hear about those. It's always struck me that there's a really good reason that we read and reread the Torah, going through it from one end to the other each year. If if you read through something only once, it's easy to take it simply at face value. It would be easy enough to read Va'era and think to yourself, God wanted Pharaoh to free the Israelite slaves, but Pharaoh was being kind of a jerk about it, so God sent some plagues to pressure Pharaoh into changing his mind. Okay, got it. Now we can move on to the next part of the story, and so forth. But my view has always been that reading Torah to find out what happened is kind of a missed opportunity. What happened, who was there, what was said, these are all important. But for me, the more important thing that we can get from reading the Torah is the why. One of the reasons that getting why out of Torah is so important is because why is often something that doesn't come out on the surface. Sometimes we can be hit over the head with the what and even the who, but the why is something we often have to dig for. It requires us to be engaged in the text. We often can't passively consume the why. To really engage in the text, you have to read it closely, which means reading and rereading. It also means applying our other knowledge and our life experience, which is why rereading the Torah every year is so important. As you grow older and gain new life experiences, you have more tools to bring to the task of finding the why in Torah. Let's take a quick look at the what in this week's portion and see if we can shake loose any interesting whys in the process. At the very start of the portion, God is talking to Moses, and God says two very interesting things. First, he tells Moses that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew God by the name El Shaddai. God says he didn't make himself known to the patriarchs by the name Adonai. This new name, Yud-He-Vav-He, I will be what I will be, is the one that Moses is to use when the Israelite slaves ask, who sent you? God's chosen this point in history to reveal a new name. I think that's definitely worthy of asking, why that and why now? Let me quickly suggest a possible answer to these questions. To me, when God changes his name, or the name he wants us to call him, he's signaling an important shift in our relationship with him. El Shaddai has connotations of God as a parent, a protector, and even a creator. God's covenant with Abraham was based simply on God making a promise and Abraham accepting God's command to get up and go. In Parshat Va'era, God is signaling a shift from creator to redeemer. The covenant that the Israelite slaves will soon be entering into at Sinai is about God's revelation through Moses of the mitzvot and our scriptures, which we accept because God redeemed us from slavery and made us free. The second thing that God says to Moses is that he's to tell the Israelites that God has heard their pleas and that he's going to free them and redeem them with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. When we think about the 10 plagues, we think of it as being about the back and forth between Moses and Pharaoh. But it's important to remember that before Moses ever goes to see Pharaoh, he first goes to speak to the Israelites. That's another thing that makes me wonder why. Although we know the story, let's take another closer look at the what and see if any whys pop out. Before God sends any plagues, he sends Moses and Aaron to meet with the Pharaoh to demand that the Israelites be freed. Remember, the Egyptians considered their pharaohs to be gods. Adonai says to Moses in Exodus 7 verse 1, "See, I place you in the role of God to Pharaoh with your brother Aaron as your prophet." So this is being framed up as the ultimate capital G God versus small g God smackdown. Who's going to be tougher? Pharaoh, the god of the Egyptians, or Adonai? Pharaoh says to Moses, "Show me what you got." And Aaron puts his staff on the ground where Adonai turns it into a snake. This doesn't impress Pharaoh, though, and he has his magicians turn a bunch of sticks into snakes. But Aaron's snake eats the Egyptian snakes, so the first point goes to Adonai. We're not surprised, of course, because we know how the story is going to turn out. But Pharaoh isn't ready to admit defeat yet. This is where Adonai begins to turn up the heat by sending plagues. There are 3 sets of 3 plagues each, plus a capstone plague which finally brings about the release of the Israelite slaves. The first two sets of 3 plagues were all patterned on natural calamities, which could have been within the Egyptians' experience. However, it's made quite clear that these are miracles being wrought by Adonai, not just natural phenomena. Moses warned Pharaoh about each of the first 2 plagues in each set: blood, frogs, swarms, and pestilence. The last plague in each trio came on without warning, but right on the tails of the plagues before them. There are a lot of places in Torah where patterns like this appear. You can see these patterns emerge when you look past the superficial what of the text. It leads you to ask, why are these patterns here? Whenever I see them, I think the patterns are there to show us that God has a purpose. Plans need a planner. When we see patterns in the events of Torah, we're being reassured that God has a plan, that he wants it to unfold in the universe he created, and that we have some part to play in making that happen. One of the other things about patterns in the Torah is that they're interesting insofar as they repeat in predictable ways, but they're even more interesting insofar as there are variations in the repetitions. There's a why behind the existence of the pattern, but there are even more whys behind the ways these patterns change. Pharaoh's court magicians could replicate the first couple of plagues, but by the third one, they were stuck, and even they said, "This is the finger of God." The first set of 3 plagues affected everyone in Egypt, from the Pharaoh all the way down to the Israelite slaves, and even to their livestock. For the second set of 3 plagues, Adonai impacts all of Egypt except for Goshen, which is where the Israelite slaves live. Why did God do this? I can think of a couple of reasons. First, it shows God's compassion for the Israelites, and second, I think it shows even more clearly just how powerful God is. Why are there changes in the pattern? What do all of these changes mean? I think it shows that not only does Adonai have a plan, but that plan is making progress. There's one other change in the pattern that leads to a very, very interesting why in this portion. After the frogs, the lice, the swarms, and the pestilence, Pharaoh hardens his heart against the Israelites. After the 6th plague, though, after the boils, it says in Exodus chapter 9, verse 12, "But Adonai stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not heed them, just as Adonai had told Moses." This is one verse that I think gives a lot of people more than a little bit of trouble. At the end of the 6th plague, maybe Pharaoh was about to give in, but Adonai hardens Pharaoh's heart so that he still refuses to free the Israelite slaves. This is 6 plagues in, and the 7th plague, hail, is where people actually start to die. I think we have to ask, why is God taking deliberate steps to make sure that Pharaoh doesn't cave in after the 7th plague? There's a lot of suffering and even death still to come, and maybe it could have been avoided if God hadn't chosen to harden Pharaoh's heart right at that moment. I think for some people, maybe a lot of people, it seems almost inconceivable that God would cause Pharaoh to remain stubborn, even knowing that this is going to lead to suffering and death. It doesn't seem compatible with our conception of God. As Jews, one of our core values is compassion. As Canadians, one of our most intrinsic ideals is fairness. Preventing Pharaoh from giving in after the 7th plague seems neither compassionate nor fair. So it's perfectly natural for us to read about this and feel uncomfortable. And it's not like these are only modern ideals that we've projected into another time and another culture. Even Abraham asks God, "Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly?" So here we are with a great big why. If the plagues were meant to convince Pharaoh that Adonai is more powerful and that the Israelite slaves should be freed to go worship Adonai, then why would God stop Pharaoh from coming to that very conclusion himself after the 7th plague? Let me suggest a possible answer. If we go back to the start of the portion, and even back to the end of last week's portion, we see that Moses goes to talk to the Israelites about how God is going to free them from slavery to the Egyptians. What does Torah tell us about how the Israelite slaves reacted to this good news? You might think they'd be pretty happy. After all, this is the deliverance that they've been praying for more than 400 years. It turns out that's not how they reacted at all. They were actually pretty terrified by the idea. They were mad at Moses for getting them in trouble with their taskmasters. The Torah tells us that the slaves wouldn't listen to Moses because their spirits were crushed by cruel bondage. This makes me wonder, who were the plagues really meant for? Sure, they were meant to send Pharaoh a message, but was he the only recipient? Was he even the main recipient of that message? Part of asking the Torah the question why is looking past the simple questions like what happened and who was there. I like to stop and think about what was going on in the minds of the people who were there as it happened. What must it have been like to have been an Israelite slave? Your whole life has been nothing but servitude and dehumanization. You're more than 10 generations into this misery, so much so that the very thought of being made free must have seemed beyond hope. Beyond hope, and maybe even more than a little bit terrifying. What would it take to bring you out of that state of mind? What would you need to be willing to take the seemingly impossible risk of striking out and starting a new life of freedom? What would it take to give you the confidence to make that unthinkably bold first step? Maybe it would take 10 miracles. 10 miracles that leave no shadow of doubt that your God has all the power he would ever need to completely defeat your oppressors. Why did God harden Pharaoh's heart? Maybe because it's much harder for someone born to slavery to learn to trust yourself completely to Adonai than it is for a Pharaoh to learn that the God of the Israelites is tougher than all the gods of Egypt. Looking at it this way, I think it's not so shocking, maybe not even surprising, that God had to harden Pharaoh's heart before the plagues he'd planned were through. God has a plan for the world, but God's plan involves us working actively to bring it to fruition. God had a plan to redeem the Israelites from slavery, but God first needed to get our ancestors ready to receive the gift of redemption. The Israelite slaves needed that so that they, and we, their descendants, would truly understand the central importance of freedom and compassion for the oppressed. Life doesn't always make it easy to see that God has a plan for the world, but our Parsha is teaching us that he does, nevertheless. Our daily concerns, some of which can admittedly be very, very serious, often make it hard for us to see the even bigger picture. Sometimes it takes a big shock to break us out of our old habits and attitudes, maybe something like at least 10 plagues, or more recently, a global pandemic. You've heard about the Great Resignation, where lots of people suddenly got knocked out of their daily grind. This disruption made a lot of people stop and reevaluate what they wanted out of life. It may be easier to see the bigger picture if we spend more time asking the Torah why. This is especially true, I believe, because the question why inevitably leads to the most important question, which is, what am I going to do about it? This is where the rubber really hits the road. When Sandy and I took our young sons to the Renfest all those years ago, we had a plan for a fun day out with the family. But my little preschooler son Isaac couldn't see that because he couldn't get past the horrifying spot of mud on his favorite t-shirt. We need to look past our troubles and our worries and trust ourselves completely to Adonai the way our ancestors did as they were about to put 400 years of slavery behind them. If we can learn to do this, then maybe we too can each find our own particular ways to fulfill our parts in God's big picture, even on those days when life splashes mud on our favorite t-shirts. Shabbat Shalom. There's a giant poster that's back here. I don't know what that's from. It's right in the way. So now we're going to turn back to our Siddurim. We will be at page 133. It's at this time in our service when our thoughts turn to those in our community and our friends and family who are in need of healing in body or in spirit. This week in our community, we're thinking particularly of Lorne Davidson, Leah Howler, Harry Richter, Francis Hernick, Wilford Walker, Shirley Herman, Rick Valentine, Marlene Friedman, Jack Kudletz, Suzanne Shear Stimson, Bernie McLennan, Harriet Lahman, Jill Rich, Nicola Proetti, Eliyahu Ben Yitzhak Vasara, Rebecca Bobdell, Parker Kaiko, Philip Shepard, Carl Katz, Nicole Hansen, Raina Rowan, Gilan Naruzi, Madeline Kitson, Kathy Kitson, Dee Hickey, Lorraine DaCosta, Adela Zur, Al Lofsky, Evelyn Tyndall, Amanda Shank, Daniel Black, Jean Elizabeth Pitt, Shmuel Ben Devora, Pauline Portnoy, Erwin Milgram, Karen Smith, Francis Van Tyne, and David Wozniak. And if there's anyone that you are praying for healing this week, you can state their name aloud or hold their name in your heart. And we sing Misha Bera. Misha Bera, Avokeinu, Mekor Abraha, Imoteinu, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Bera, Imoteinu, Mekor Abraha, Avokeinu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And I'll ask you please to turn to page 135 and rise for the prayer for the state of Israel. Tzur Yisrael v'go'alo, Barechna et Medinat Yisrael Hagshamat Tikvatenu. Rock and Redeemer of Israel, place your blessing upon the state of Israel, the realization of our hope for a Jewish homeland. Send your light and your truth to its inhabitants, and spread over them the shelter of your peace. Bestow insight upon its leaders, judges, and representatives, that they may pursue justice, freedom, and integrity. Visit blessing upon all your people Israel, wherever we dwell. Plant the love of Zion into our hearts, that our footsteps may race to walk upon its soil. And may the vision of your prophet Isaiah soon be fulfilled. For Torah shall come forth from Zion, and God's word from Jerusalem. And let us say, Amen. Please remain standing and turn to page 149 for the Elenu. Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol, v'teikun la lioseh reshit, asher samtalkin liyachad shemo, שהוא נוטה שמיים ועושה הארץ, ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והחשבותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Please be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who have brightened our lives but are with us now only in memory. We're sad to announce the recent death of Rabbi Bernard Baskin, who passed away on Wednesday. The funeral will take place Sunday, January 22nd at 11 a.m. at Temple Anshe Shalom in Hamilton. We are in the period of Shloshim for Rena Cohen Dvorkin, sister of Gary Dvorkin and Tish, sister-in-law of Francoise and Adrianov, aunt of Joshua, Jeremy, and Liza, mother of Rona, Harley, Susan, and Jeffrey, great-aunt of Lilia and Ava, and also for Esther Wochenmart, mother of Toby Songa, Rachel Liobarski, David Wochenmart, and the late Sarah Wochenmart, mother-in-law to Darius Songa, David Liobarski, Carla Wochenmart, and Bruce Smith, sister of Nina and grandmother of 9. This week marks the yahrzeit of Helen Lillian Weisenbluth, grandmother of Emma. Mo Hannon, father of Jerry, grandfather of Jonathan and Michael. Henry Batcher, husband of Corolla, father of Priscilla, Julie, and Denise, grandfather of Matthew and Ava. Celia Bly, mother of Miriam Richter. Blanche Stober, mother of Marcy Binsky, grandmother of Leah and Miranda, great-grandmother of Kyla, Logan, Ava, Cole, and Benjamin. Harry Butler, father of Chris, father-in-law of Robin, grandfather of Jenny, Abby, and Rebecca. Winnie White, mother of Dennis Norton, grandmother of Jordan. Solomon Amar, father of Albert, grandfather of Adam, Nathan, and Jacob. Sasha Foyer, father of Sam, grandfather of Daniel, Aaron, and Rachel. David Leeming, brother of Darlene Freeman. Sam Freeman, father of Michael, grandfather of Cecile and the late Jacob. Mariette Yanofsky, mother of Raymond Hazan. Ted Dvorkin, father of Gary, grandfather of Joshua and Jeremy. Edward Spokojny, father-in-law of Les Stock, grandfather of Linda, Marla, and Deborah. Rochelle Botnick, cousin of Arlene and Harold. Paul Gerstel, father of Sherry. Blanche Smith, mother-in-law of Yolanda. Eliezer Levy, stepfather of David Grossman. And Ada Luzia, sister of Judith Tamari. Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be for a blessing. If there are any other names that you'd like to call out for yahrzeit or remembrance this Shabbat, please state their name. Hold them in your hearts. I'll ask those who are mourning to please rise first. then the rest of the community to rise in support for them and for all of those who have no one to say the Kaddish for them. We recite the Mourner's Kaddish on page 159. Yidkadal v'yidkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala uvizman kavri v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaled v'yithalal shmei dekudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiram bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yasei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei adam v'imru, amen. Please be seated. This is the time when we normally bring you someone from the board to bring greetings and announcements. It turns out I'm on the board. I didn't realize, but so I'm going to do that. First of all, I want to thank Albert Amar for adding his beautiful music to our service. It's always such a joy to work with you, Albert. And you're going to get one more chance for our closing Zmirah after Kiddush, but thank you, Albert, and we look forward to that. And we're back in 2 weeks, so, you know, try the roast beef. I'd also like to thank some other people who have helped us with our service tonight. I want to thank our shamas, Dave Gordon and Zach Harper. And I also want to thank my tech volunteer for tonight, Emma Weisenbluth, who had a much better offer, but she came anyway to help us out. And I want to mention, by the way, before I forget, after the service tonight, if you are joining us on the live stream, or you can get to a mobile device quickly right at the end of the service, we are having a virtual Oneg Shabbat on Zoom. The link for that is in this week's Shamas. I think it was in last week's Shamas as well. So please join with Faith Ellen, who will be hosting that. And, you know, bring your own snacks, but enjoy some schmoozing after the service virtually as well. And for those of you who are here, we have the usual so-so coffee and delicious cookies and cakes. Our upcoming services. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. is a regular Shabbat service with our Beit Sefer Grade 6, Kita Gimel, participating, and they led by Eleanor Stock. It will be followed by a potluck lunch sponsored by the parents of Kita Gimel. So everyone is welcome to join us for that. I have it on good authority that we can expect a special story from Rick Dukalski as well, so it should be a lovely, lovely time. Please do join us. Next Friday, January 27th. Okay, so this is the part where normally, okay, it's, you know, it's all in the show, so we don't have to worry. Pay close attention. Next Friday, this is January 27th, we are having a family Erev Shabbat service. We'll be honoring our Beit Sefer teachers, and there'll be a special oneg after that, but we have a special start time next week, 7:30 p.m. If you show up at 8, you'll be in time for the special oneg. So join us 7:30 Friday, January 27th, and again next Saturday, January 28th at 10 a.m. regular service, and our guest leader will be our own Rabbi Emeritus Larry Englander. So that will be fun. Other things going on. So Beit Sefer this Sunday, as usual, Rabbi Englander has started his Beit Midrash Solel course, 6 sessions altogether, looking at 5 Megillot, each with a different story and Jewish festival. It started last week, but you're in plenty of time to drop in, starting with session number 2. The link for that is also in the Shamas Weekly Update. Other things going on, this Tuesday there is a lunch and learn at 11:30 a.m. Via Zoom, and the topic is Spain, its Jewish past, presence, and future. And it will be led by Solel's own Leah Spokoni Stock, who is in Spain. So, you know, she's got the inside track there. Also, on Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m., the Association of Reformed Jewish Educators, the ARJE, which is the professional association of all of the Reform Directors of Education throughout the union, are holding their conference. It's in Texas, but we will be able to join in by Zoom to see our own Arlene Botnick be awarded a Distinguished Educator Award. Lots of syllables to get my tongue around there, but so very special award, which is going to recognize Arlene for her 36 years of service to Solel, and more yet to come. So it's a very special event. Arlene will also be joining by Zoom, so you know we're all in good company that way. And again, the link for that is in last week's Shabbat, so please join us for that, or if you need the link, you can contact the office. That's Tuesday, 7 p.m. And everything else you can find at solel.ca/events and in your inbox. And now it is my pleasure to invite David Grossman, who is going to lead us with Kiddush on page 163.
Please rise. Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker, Yom HaShishi. Now the whole universe, the sky, earth, and all their array was completed. The seventh day, God had ended the work of creation and rested with all work completed. Then God blessed the seventh day and called it holy, for with this day God had completed the work of creation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei puri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kosho v'yahavu ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh Yom Tefillah Lemikrai Kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim Ki banu v'chavta Yotanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim V'Shabbat Kodecha
Thank you, David. You may be seated, everyone. Unless you're at home, stand up. We know you sat through that. Now we're going to turn to page 189 for our closing Zmira. Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharei, Malachei HaSharei, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMalachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.